What we have to do, and as your Chief Executive I have to try and balance, is the judgment to get us back to our core business of research and teaching, but in the context of a city that has truly suffered a national natural disaster. Let's start with the four big themes that we need in order to get our university back online. And they come under the four headings: staff, students, facilities and programs. In response to the all-staff email that went out with the questionnaire and linked to the gathering of that data, over 750 staff have responded, and of that roughly 93% so that they will be ready to come back to work on or about March the 14th. But anything we can do to get a more complete picture is very important. But it also means there are about 50 staff who in some way are compromised and are not able to come back to work on that time frame. We also need to acknowledge that when staff come back to the university, it's not going to be business as usual. They're not going to be able to get to the spaces that are familiar, access the materials that in their view are absolutely essential to life in our academic community, and that's going to cause some frustration and some anger. We're then going to ask staff to perform their duties out of open plan offices, in teaching spaces that may include tents or high-tech newly formed structures. We're going to need staff to be pretty flexible if we're going to get through the first restart period. But there is absolutely clear evidence that the vast majority of our staff want this institution to get back to work, get up on its feet, and show ourselves, our students and the wider community that the University of Canterbury is indeed good to go. Clearly, having staff and students and facilities which are fit for purpose progressively coming online means that our programs and program delivery is going to be a little confused. But I believe, and until I believe otherwise, will continue to state that our mission is to deliver a quality full-year academic program of teaching this calendar year. We are going to have to, though, do it in ways that are novel and different and to some extent customised. I'm going to need your help to do that, and I'm already seeing huge evidence that that help is forthcoming. Your turn now. It's been a long lecture.
I know there are a lot of moving parts here, but can you give us a sense of the likely scenario that's going to unfold on Monday at 8 o'clock?
Well, my understanding is that what we will have done is we will have by then some idea of how much space will be available for which purposes and which buildings may be accessible for the recovery of what materials by when.
It's really a comment rather than a question. I'm a bit worried about your emphasis on trying to keep to the 11th of July for semester 2. I think that's a really bad decision because you're trying then to put all the flexibility, all the changes, go into the time when we've most stress, when we've got most difficulty, and it really, you don't want to have to reverse yourself. I can see a risk that you will say that day it won't work. I think it would be much better to say the second semester is likely to have to shift back a week or two. You compress perhaps the August vacation, you run a week later than we normally do.
I think what we want to be able to say is that we won't necessarily tell you what's happening in semester 2, but by the time we get to the 11th of July, as much of the facilities that are likely to be available this year will have become available, or we'll be very sure when they will be available. So I think I wouldn't overinterpret what we mean by the 11th of July, but I hear what you're saying. We do want to preserve degrees of freedom, but we want, for example, the students who are on exchange with other universities in New Zealand or who are studying abroad on their study abroad experience, we want to really say there will be a program on offer back here from the 11th of July. What that program will be, whether it's in a tent or whether it's in a high-tech wooden structured building on the Oval or whether it's done online, we'll let you know that.
You've already talked, Rod, about the idea that we can't have an all-go, all-stop. In other words, there's going to be a progressive start and things are going to be staggered and variable across the campus. And I guess what I would like would be some sort of commitment from senior management that the first semester then actually doesn't look like a standard first semester for all different parts of the university.
Agreed.
I'm talking about engineering, which is very self-contained, and for example, I can imagine the only way we will be able to deliver a coherent course in engineering, which is up to accreditation standards would be to have no examination period at all and to actually teach right through that and perhaps have 1 week of a few tests or something. And I'd like some sort of commitment that we have that flexibility within units.
You do. Let's be honest, that is exactly the point. We are asking the academic programs to determine what to place where and not assume that everything you would have done in the second semester has to only be done in the second semester, and that everything that was planned for the first semester has to be completed by the end of the first semester. That is not what we're saying when we say the second semester start on the 11th of July. So absolutely agree that that flexibility is based on programs, it's based on the availability of facilities, and it's based on the control the academics need to have to meet the core mission, which is the delivery of the academic program this calendar year.
We talked about laboratory facilities, which Sue raised, and I think is certainly very critical for engineering and science. Certainly going through, talking with my staff, the absolutely critical laboratories are computer facilities, where often we can do simulations or whatever they might be of real ones. The key here, I guess, is that we need to get some core IT facilities which may be shared and which may in fact have extended hours so we teach till 11 o'clock at night if need be. And we'd like to see those up and going very quickly indeed.
Okay. The reassuring thing is that all of our core IT infrastructure is 100% sound and stable and operating today. What we need to do is make sure we have adequate space for the logging on and workstations that can access those systems. So that is definitely a priority for us.
I imagine changing the timetable where we are able to have lectures and tents, for example, would be a nightmare. But would it be possible to have lectures in the evenings?
It will not only be possible, I think it may be essential. And the other thing will be, do we use Fridays, which are often lecture light, and do we use Saturdays? Obviously there's going to be some flexibility. I am not going to direct that you have to teach at a given time. I'm going to ask you to think about how to make best use of scarce facilities over the period of time from now to the end of the year.
Is it going to be permissible to run, for example, small group fourth year programs from people's homes that are certified safe within the vicinity of this university?
I see no particular reason why not. I just think we need to keep some sort of register so we know who is running what where, and that it is a reasonable ask of our students to attend the where. So that will go to, is it accessible, how difficult is it to get to, all those kind of things. But in principle, yes.
Myself have also expressed concern about the ability of the university to provide adequate facilities, and one of them being, of course, some kind of IT hub for lab space. But the other facility that hasn't really come up, that was raised, was, it maybe seems minor, but perhaps isn't, toilet facilities.
The buildings at the Oval obviously include appropriate, well-plumbed facilities connected to the sewerage system, which you'll be relieved to know is operating perfectly fine from here. I suspect where it goes from here is somebody else's problem, but they have told us that that is not a problem we need to concern ourselves with.
What's the policy on space off-site generally? Because I'm sure there are a number of people who could deliver programs if they had a room with 15 or 20 desks or whatever, but would need it every day. So if it can't be provided here, but it enables people to deliver a one-year program, can we go?
Spaces. There are 30,000 school kids without a school desk to go back to in the city. Some incredible number. So the Ministry of Education is pretty much grabbing every space they can to find teaching spaces in the city. That's partly what triggered we have to build our own. We cannot rely on finding space elsewhere. But consistent with the principle that in principle we don't object, then so long as it's coordinated centrally and we know who is teaching what where, and that the where is safe and that the where is appropriate and accessible, then in principle there is no objection to using off-site space.